This is the Nashvillager podcast. It's July 6, 2026. On this day in 1935, the National Labor Relations Act went into effect. The law cemented the right to collective bargaining and sought to dial back the explosiveness and periodic violence that had come to prominence in fights between unions and employers. On a procedural level, one very unusual thing about that law was how fast things moved. Congress passed it, the president signed it, and the law went into effect all within a matter of days. And just 2 years later, the Supreme Court issued a ruling in a lawsuit challenging the measure. The court said the law was good and that it could stand. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with context and backstory from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. In contrast with that quick series of actions for the 1935 labor law, there's a certain seasonality that we can usually expect with laws that are passed in Tennessee, especially the more controversial ones. The legislative season begins in January. It usually builds up to votes on the most contentious matters just before lawmakers adjourn in the middle of spring. And after the legislators go home, the suing season begins. If someone feels that a new law is harmful, they can petition the courts to review the law, or some portion of it, to determine if it really is in line with the state or federal constitution. Rulings in those cases are how the judicial branch plays its part in the overall system of checks and balances. Sometimes a lawsuit is the only way to push back against a measure you don't think is right. That's especially true when one party has a supermajority in the legislature, the way the GOP does right now in Tennessee, because the other party has little chance to force debate on parts of a law that could be problematic. And sometimes lawmakers file a law expecting or even hoping that it will be challenged. Why would they want that to happen? Because it's the only way to potentially drive an issue all the way up to the Supreme Court, and they're hoping the High Court will issue a ruling that changes the legal standard on an issue. Now, when legal challenges are filed depends on a number of factors. And in theory, it could happen at pretty much any time. But we do tend to see a flurry of lawsuits filed right after the legislative session and more coming to light in the summer. Both of those clusters are related to the fact that in Tennessee, most of our laws go into effect on July 1st. Sometimes cases are filed right away in hopes of convincing a judge to issue an injunction that keeps the law from going into effect. Others aren't filed until the law is active, because that's when someone can clearly show that they are directly impacted and thus have standing to sue. This year, Tennessee's congressional redistricting was challenged by a group of complaints that were filed separately and combined into one federal case. Another early case, filed by the ACLU on behalf of several individuals, challenged one measure in the suite of new immigration laws that the White House helped craft. That law makes it a state crime for certain people to remain in Tennessee. Now, the case was thrown out because the judge determined the ACLU reached too far in trying to establish standing. But since it failed on a technicality, another suit could still challenge the merits. One of the other immigration measures in that suite of new laws affects a state health insurance program that helps very sick and disabled children. A lawsuit filed last month has already resulted in a temporary injunction. Without it, health departments would have started asking recipients for their immigration status on July 1st. And that information would have been handed over to a state agency that works with ICE. Instead, a judge said the state needs to pump the brakes until the case can be fully sorted out in court. So those families have a reprieve. Memphis Shelby County School District asked for similar action in their lawsuit over lawmakers' decision to create a new state-appointed board that takes certain financial decisions away from the normal elected school board. But that judge didn't issue an injunction that blocks the law from taking effect for however long it takes to decide the case. Instead, the judge placed a 14-day block on the law, buying the local district just a little more time to take some necessary seasonal actions like approving hires before the new structure upends everything. Now that we're into July and a huge slate of new laws are truly in effect, it'll be interesting to see what new legal challenges emerge, if any. And of course, the cases already in the system could take months or even years to be concluded. In just a few minutes, the new Nashville Congressional districts and an old North Nashville wound. That's coming up after the newscast.
Nashville Public Radio is always here to keep you informed, whether it's the latest news or music you should check out. Every week, What Where Wednesdays shares the latest happenings taking place right here in Nashville by talking to members of our community, putting on events in your neighborhood and beyond. So tune in to What Were Wednesdays every Wednesday, and you can always find events at WNXP.org/events.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. The life of a longtime Middle Tennessee labor leader will be remembered this week. Vonda McDaniel was the sitting president of the Nashville Central Labor Council, which remembered her in a statement as a visionary leader who brought together people to, quote, build multiracial, working-class power. She died last week at age 60. McDaniel was a graduate of Tennessee State University. She worked for more than 30 years at a Bridgestone plant in Laverne, where she initially got involved in labor work through the United Rubber Workers. She went on to be the vice president of AFL-CIO, the state's largest labor organization. McDaniel was also a founding member of the racial equity organization Stand Up Nashville, as well as the labor groups Music City Construction Careers and Tennessee for All. Before her death last week, McDaniel was set to retire from the Central Labor Council at the end of the year. She was planning to become the co-executive director of social justice training school, the Highlander Center. A celebration of McDaniel's life is Wednesday at noon at the Music City Center. Multiple agencies are investigating the arrest and death of a man while in jail in Clarksville, and some community leaders want federal authorities to step in. They say officers used excessive force in arresting 34-year-old Darius Chappell. Here's more from WPLN's LaTonya Turner.
A Clarksville police officer has been placed on administrative leave as public concerns grow. A rally on Saturday at a Clarksville church drew demands for answers and accountability.
This is what happens when the people who's supposed to protect you kill you. They wouldn't do a dog like they did this brother. Understand.
Darius Chappell was arrested by Montgomery County deputies on June 29th with assistance from a Clarksville police officer and canine dog. An online video from a bystander shows deputies holding Chappell to the ground as he screamed and struggled while the canine was biting him. Clarksville authorities and the TBI are investigating the use of force during the arrest. At a rally, NAACP State President Gloria Sweet Love called for help from the Federal Bureau of Investigation.
To come and look at the facts, look at all of the videos, look at everything that was done. We don't feel like we will get what we need in this town and in this culture without some outside help.
She also wants answers about Chappell's death in the Montgomery County Jail. She says the sheriff told her Chappell was fine after family members asked for a wellness check. He died the next day. LaTonya Turner, WPLN News.
2 fatal shootings by law enforcement officers this weekend are being investigated by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. One shooting involved a state highway patrol officer. The other involved Tennessee National Guardsmen. On Friday, a kidnapping suspect was fatally shot by police after a standoff on Interstate 40 near Jackson during the holiday weekend. The TBI says the incident began with a pursuit that ended when the highway patrol laid out spikes. A standoff followed, and the male driver allowed a young child to leave. Police say the man then began walking the shoulder and pulled out a weapon. It's unclear what type. And law enforcement fired fatal shots. The other incident happened on Sunday in Memphis when National Guard troops shot and killed a man who they say was carrying a handgun. Police say they were responding to calls of shots fired downtown, and the man started running. Details are unclear about why the situation escalated, and 2 guardsmen shot the man. He died at the scene. The TBI has now been called out to 22 shootings by law enforcement across the state so far this year. The Tennessee Valley Authority is about to be sued. The Southern Environmental Law Center says the utility has violated the Clean Air Act. TVA plans to run both a gas plant and coal plant on the same property, a short distance from Clarksville. WPLN's Caroline Eggers explains.
The Cumberland Fossil Plant is the largest and most polluting facility in the state. The 50-year-old coal plant was on track to begin closure this year. But a few months ago, amid pressure from the Trump administration, TVA scrapped those plans. Now, here's what's unheard of. On that same site, TVA has already been building a big gas plant that will burn fracked methane. Combined, the 2 plants will release significant climate pollution and dangerous levels of air pollution, which is linked to premature death and could affect a swath of Middle Tennessee. The Southern Environmental Law Center is now planning to sue. Years ago, TVA could have picked a source like solar that doesn't cause any air pollution on site and pulls little to no water from the Cumberland River. TVA never provided evidence to justify a gas plant, but it did show that the aging Cumberland coal plant was risky to run and would need more than $700 million in repairs. Now, SCLC says Tennesseans will bear most of that cost in their monthly bills. Caroline Eggers, WPLN News.
Some of Nashville's bus routes are now running more frequently. WPLN's Cynthia Abrams reports on WeGo's latest service changes, which went into effect this weekend.
Getting to the airport by bus could now be slightly easier. The airport route will run every half hour during the day and every 40 minutes in the evening. That's about 15 to 20 minutes faster than it currently operates. The Opry Mills route will also become more frequent. Another change includes expanding the WeGo Link zone to include Overton High School and parts of West Meade. WeGo Link provides discounts to riders who need to take Uber or Lyft to get to a bus stop. All of these updates are a result of the 2024 transit referendum. That's where voters approved a half-cent sales tax increase to directly fund transit projects, including this round of changes. Cynthia Abrams, WPLN News.
For a complete list of the summer service updates, visit wegotransit.com. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. When Tennessee Republicans approved a new congressional map last month, the move fractured Memphis into 3 different districts. That map also divides the historically black neighborhood of North Nashville. WPLN's Mariana Bacchiao reports the split falls along the same lines where Interstate 40 cut through the neighborhood decades ago.
At a block party on Buchanan Street, State Senator Charlene Oliver is talking to voters and other movers and shakers in the community like Judge Howard Gentry.
Hey, Mr. Gentry. How are you?
How you doing? I just want to make you smile.
Oliver protested the new congressional map along with other Democrats, arguing the change intentionally dilutes black voting power. Republicans say it was just about party politics. In the state Senate, Oliver alone faces sanctions for her protest, in which she stood on her desk holding a banner that read "No Jim Crow 2.0. In the House, every Democrat has been stripped of their committees after a walkout. Republican leadership says that's because Democrats broke decorum.
Look at where we are. We're on Buchanan Street, the heart of North Nashville, historic North Nashville. Jefferson Street is right around the corner.
From where Oliver stands on Buchanan Street, she can cross districts just by crossing the street. And just a block down is a bridge over Interstate 40. In the 1960s, the construction of this highway cut through the heart of the city's black commercial and cultural center, displacing thousands of people and hundreds of businesses.
That area held considerable political power.
That's Larotha Williams, professor of African American and public history at Tennessee State University. He says that along with art and commerce, the construction of I-40 stifled the burgeoning political power found in North Nashville, much of it concentrated in churches.
But with the interstate, a lot of these centers become displaced because now a lot of those folks that went to those churches, they might not be going to these churches anymore.
The highway also undercut major black power brokers like Henry Goodjelly Jones, who ran a barbecue restaurant and unofficial town hall. These days, it's a luxury apartment complex. The Civil Rights Act of 1962, which moved to protect the black vote, is weaker now. And Tennessee's new congressional map now traces the same lines I-40 cut through here.
I think we're living in a time where the racism isn't hidden anymore.
That's Jamail Campbell-Gooch, a community organizer in North Nashville. He says that having 2 congressional districts in the same area will make it harder to run an issue-based campaign.
If people don't know who their representatives are, then they actually don't know who to target or who to work with to improve their community.
Tennessee Republicans say that their map only considers partisan data, not racial data, but the specifics aren't public. Recently, a mathematician at the University of Chicago found the only way to recreate Tennessee's map was to feed a computer racial data.
It just confirms what I think the average everyday person knows, is that our legislator is racist, and it will do whatever it can to stay racist.
Republicans deny that. In a statement to WPLN News, Senate Speaker Randy McNally says race, quote, played absolutely no role in the decision-making process. But more changes could be coming. Republicans are considering another mid-decade change to state House and Senate districts, like the one in North Nashville that Senator Oliver currently represents. Mariana Bacallao, WPLN News.
We do this roundup of Nashville news every weekday. Please consider subscribing on your favorite podcasting app. And thanks so much to all of you who've left 5 stars, a thumbs up, or a review in your app of choice. That little bit of love really does tell the algorithms more people should hear about us. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported. You can make a donation at WPLN.org. And that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.